You're listening to Wise Women with Daisy Khan, where faith rolls up its sleeves as a force for good, and where women define the future with wisdom and wonder. I'm Daisy Khan, author, speaker, and a Muslim woman who spent her life wrestling with the messy, miraculous collision of faith and real life. And kindly subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Welcome to Wise Women with Daisy Khan. This is another part of the series on Islamophobia, but this one is in reverse, where we are changing the narrative by unearthing beautiful stories of love in Islam. Today, we're not going to talk about the words that have to do with war, conflict, extremism, violence, and political tension. Instead, we're going to take you through this beautiful new lens of love to challenge stereotypes, to develop empathy, and to challenge how the world sees Muslims. To do this, I've invited a wonderful person, a producer of the much anticipated documentary called Islam's Greatest Stories of Love, which is premiering very soon on August 22nd on PBS. So, my guest is Alex Kronemer. He's the co-founder and executive producer of Unity Productions Foundation, which is a non-profit dedicated to fostering peace and understanding through the power of media. They have produced 13 major films and dozens of shorts that have received awards and have been very instrumental in interfaith civic and education and peace-building efforts throughout the world. I actually had the privilege of appearing in one of their first major films, Muhammad, Legacy of the Prophet, which aired shortly after 9/11. Alex is also a writer and a speaker. He holds a master's degree in theology from Harvard University, and in his past life, he was a diplomat at the U.S. Department of State, where he contributed to the landmark legislation that established the U.S. Institute of Peace. So I welcome you, Alex, to my podcast.
Well, thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Okay, so I'm going to start with your story first. I've known you for so many years, but only today, after I received your official resume, I found out that you studied theology. I had no idea, and that you were a former diplomat. I didn't know that either. So, are you part of that club of Muslims that had to dedicate their life to community service after 9/11?
Yeah, well, in fact, you mentioned my previous life as a diplomat. I was actually working in the U.S. Department of State as the Middle East Desk Officer for Human Rights. I was invited by the Saudi government to be one of the first journalists to come in and cover the Hajj when they were starting opening that up to the world. And while I was doing that, while I was on that experience, I always like to refer to him as sort of the Saudi Arabian Indiana Jones, like this
Hmm.
kind of swashbuckling archaeologist, Saudi archaeologist who just was like, had a great beard and a ponytail and a hat and the whole bit. And while I was there, he took me on a sort of like tour beyond the normal places you go to when you're in Saudi Arabia, to places where the Prophet did this and the Prophet
Mm.
Muhammad did that. And it really suddenly inspired me to say, wow, this is a great story. Why don't we make a documentary about this? This would be great. Naively, I might say, because I had no idea when I was saying that to myself how hard the journey would be. But in any
Right.
case, I was in the middle of working on that, having taken that leave of absence when 9/11 happened. And suddenly this wasn't just making a film that was, educational or meant to be interesting. It was enormously important to the American Muslim community, who in that moment were besieged and caught off guard and not knowing how to respond to this terrible event. So suddenly, what was initially like, I'm going to take a few months off, it actually was 9 months. I realized that there was an important role to play in the media,
Mm.
because you could reach millions of people that way. So I took a leap. I left my really nice job that I liked a lot to begin this program that we've now run for 20 years of making films about Muslims and Islam in many contexts, in many ways, things that would appeal to an American audience, developing educational, interfaith, peacemaking, civic engagement projects around them. And
Mm.
for the last 15 years, consulting in Hollywood with television programs that feature Muslim characters or Muslim storylines and that kind of thing.
What a journey. So, what led to this project? Because, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, you usually don't associate love with Islam, especially in the Western media. I mean, what personally drew you to explore love in this context?
Exactly that. That you don't normally associate love with Islam. And not only do Western media not do it, or Western audiences, but even Muslim audiences themselves don't necessarily associate those two. And yet, and going back to that first project we did, the story of the life of the Prophet Muhammad, one of the things that got left on the cutting room floor, as they say, was the really engaging, compelling, emotionally beautiful story between the prophet and his first wife, Khadija. And uh, I had marched 20 years making films. I never lost memory of that story, and sort of the desire to tell it in some way. And while those ideas were kind of floating around in my mind, I happened really very coincidentally to meet this young woman, Ariella Giotto Hol, who is a Muslim convert and who is the host of the show,
Yeah.
who happened to be on the same quest of exploring these stories, but for a very important reason. She had recently lost her father. He had died from cancer, who she calls the love of her life. And she was sort of in a state she refers to as brokenness. And she was trying
Mm,
to piece herself back together by examining these stories. And it was she took a leap and I took a leap because I really, out of just a conversation with her, suddenly thought, we should be following you as you're exploring this, and that's how we should tell these stories. And amazingly, she said, okay, I'll do that. So that was the origin of it. It was a stories not told, not known, really, to many people. And again, getting back to, I mean, we deal with the Taj Mahal, we deal with Malcolm X and his half sister Ella Collins, we have Rumi with Moses and his sister, and other stories. But in regards to story, going back to the story of Prophet Muhammad and Khadijah, after our big premiere, so some more than one person had come up to me and said this was like a revelation to them to see this story, because they had grown up only regarding the prophet through ideology, as somebody said, and politics,
yeah.
and never through love. And
Yeah.
yet love was the center of the story. And the
Yeah.
story between he and Khadijah is a story that really, if you really want to understand Islam, how it started, you have to know that story. So anyway,
Right.
that was the inspiration. That's why we did it. It was what was motivating me to tell these great stories that still influence people today.
Yeah. So this is so beautiful because when I remember when we were filming and I met Ariel and I thought, wow, what a balancing act, because here you are taking purely historical stories, at least the ones that I was narrating, and here you are balancing it with a personal story. I
Yeah.
mean, were you worried that one might overshadow the other?
You know, in fact, that's what we're doing all the time, isn't it? We're taking our personal stories and putting them in the context of these stories from the past, of heroes and villains and moments in history, and that narrate um, things that we ourselves can't put together. Or put it this way, the value of storytelling and stories is it takes the chaos of the world and you organize it into a three-act structure. You organize it into a structure where there's a character and a problem. Things happen that contribute to the problem getting worse or getting better, and then in act three you resolve it, sometimes often for the good, but sometimes for the bad.
Hmm.
And doing that creates for us uh, ways of also reflecting on our own lives
Right.
in those structures.
Yeah, the
Yes.
emotional thread exists in each and every one of them. I mean, just from what I've gleaned about the other stories that you have in here, I mean, you are portraying divine love. You are portraying romantic love, familial love, artistic love, with the Taj Mahal and all these forms of love. So I know that you brought storytellers. Were there any cinematic techniques that you employed to convey these diverse forms of love, like music? Was there anything? What do we look forward to, Alex? Tell
Well,
us.
I mean, I think one thing you're going to look forward to is novel, because many of these stories have never been viewed through the prism of love. You're going to find new and fresh insights. For example, the Taj Mahal, which we all see as this beautiful building.
Mm,
Well, we pursue it in a way that it's not a building, it's a monumental Quran that has a message to the world.
mm,
Um, of all the things that we think we know about Malcolm X, hardly anyone knows the incredibly decisive role that the love his older sister had for him at every turning point in his life played in making Malcolm X Malcolm X. I've already mentioned Prophet Muhammad and his wife Khadija, which incidentally, as you know, you were one of the people who really brought a lot of not only wisdom and insight, but heart to that story because it is a story of a lot of heart.
mm,
So a big part of it is the stories themselves because everybody has these questions and everybody's asking what is love, what do I do when I lose love, what do I do with a broken heart? These are all the questions that are
mm.
being pursued in it. Now with regard to the, yes, cinematography, we're always using a moving camera, a crane, a drone, cameras that are panning, they bring a lot of energy to the shots. And music. I mean,
Yeah.
music is key to
Mm,
giving an audience the cues, the emotional cues of what's happening in the inner life of the people. As a filmmaker, that's actually the joy of
mm.
making these things because you bring all these elements together to create a work of art. It's
Yeah.
visual, it's storytelling, it's musical, it's sound effects, it's all these elements together
Yeah.
and coming out with a product that connects.
And that's why your all your documentaries so far have been so successful because you are masters at taking a subject, a book or something, and then bringing it to life in such a meaningful way. I mean, really, kudos to you for doing this. Did you bring any interfaith voices to shape the film at all, or was it all Muslims?
I mean, one of the major storytellers in the film is Michael Calabria, who's a Franciscan friar, and he tells a large part of the story of the Taj Mahal. He's a professor at the University of Saint Bonaventure in New York, and he's
Mm,
the professor of Arabic and Islamic studies. So he's fluent in Arabic,
mm,
and he just describes how when he went to Taj Mahal for the first time, he wasn't expecting to see all this Quranic calligraphy all over it.
yeah,
And
inscribed everywhere.
yeah, and then he would read it, and he realized that it wasn't just decorative as we typically or even to be ignored. He began to feel this was the point of the building, and there was a message to it. And
Mm,
so he's written a book called The Language of the Taj Mahal. That's how we came across him. And I always say, going back to our first film, we always are trying to show what I call the rainbow coalition that is the Muslim community in America.
mm,
We
yeah.
have brown, black, and white. We have women who cover. We have women who don't cover. We have people who are traditional. We have people who are we might call them progressive. And all of them belong under the tent of Islam, and we try to um, um, model that by including all those different kinds of people when we're looking to find out who's going to be on camera to speak and to talk.
Yeah. So you brought all these stories that come from that span not only centuries but also geographies, right? I mean, you have
Yes.
Saudi Arabia, you have Persia with Rumi, and he's claimed by everybody, but let's just say Persian Empire around that time. Then you have Malcolm X here in the United States, and you have Taj Mahal in India. Is there any other country that you've got?
We touched a little bit on Syria. Uh,
Hmm.
we are in Egypt for part of the show.
Oh, okay.
In the storytelling, we
Yeah,
are
yeah.
yes, we are in Arabia.
Mm.
We are in Uzbekistan. We have a pretty big footprint.
Is there anything that sticks with you, something that changed you personally during the process?
When I'm taking on any of these films, you get to know the topic. When I say get the topic, know the topic deeply, I don't mean intellectually. I mean emotionally deeply.
Mm,
Because
mm,
when you're making a film, you're creating an emotional product. You always say that film conveys information through emotion, different than a book. You can't go through an experience like that without it impacting you and changing you in sometimes very significant ways. And every film I've ever made has had that. Only a month ago, my only sibling, my sister, died suddenly and
mm,
unexpectedly. And I've found that the filming and the stories that I explored and lived with very deeply for all that time created places for me to go immediately with my grief and with my sorrow and brokenness. In some ways, for me personally, the film's been a miracle to work on because it's worked a miracle in my own life dealing with these issues that I'm dealing with right now.
Yeah, seeing Ariel and her experience firsthand prepared you for yours.
But it's not just seeing her experience. It was
Yeah.
talking to you and listening to what you had to say. It was listening to some of the scholars who talked about some of the people who talked about Malcolm X. It was, of
Mhm.
course, Omid Safi at the end who kind of pulls it all together. We're talking about Rumi,
Yeah.
and and he makes a point. We start the film with the story of Layla Majnun. If your audience doesn't know that story, it's not correct to call it the Arab or the Muslim Romeo and Juliet because it actually predates Romeo and Juliet by 700 years.
Right.
Romeo and Juliet is sort of the European English Layla Majnun, but it has a similarity in as much as it's a star-crossed love story of two
Mm.
young people who love each other, who are uh, prohibited by their families of coming together, and it ends tragically just
Mm.
as Romeo and Juliet does. And I hope really the audience takes
Mm.
away from the end of this to try to cultivate Majnun eyes in how we contemplate the world.
The Muslim community is going through so many challenges right now, especially here in the United States. Do you hope to bridge these stories and narratives to the lived experience of Muslims today?
Well, in fact, that's been the purpose of these films from the beginning. Is it was recognizing, particularly after 9/11, but before that, because we started our work before that, recognizing that most people never met a Muslim, most people in America, and the only Muslims they knew were the bad guys that they saw on television and movies and in headlines. And our work these last 20 plus years has been to really try to tell all these stories of Muslim culture and history that humanizes and normalizes and also gets people to recognize the fact that Muslims have made an enormous contribution to this country from the beginning. And our last film, the Great Muslim American Road Trip, the road trip that a Muslim couple takes from Chicago to LA on Route 66, that most iconic American road,
Mm.
we come to find that the Muslim story can be found at every stop along the way
Mm.
in the ways that Muslims have been a part of American history, a part of the American fiber from the beginning. So, yes, the whole point is to try to bridge that difference and also to affirm Muslims in their own sense of self, that, hey,
Yeah.
hey, we do belong in this country.
Yeah.
Hey, we have made a difference. Hey, in our story, the enemy of the Reich, the Northern Icon story, it's, American Muslims can often feel apart or separate from the history of America or the West. But here's a story of a woman who was a hero during World War II and
Mm.
helped the British win the war,
Mm.
and was captured by the Nazis and died in a concentration camp. This is a story that connects American Muslims to American history, to Western history. So everything we're trying to do in our storytelling is to create bridges and to create connectivity and to create paths to communicate and come together. And that's why we not only make films, we do all these outreach projects. So we
Yeah.
take the film and bring together different communities, create discussions, create interfaith work, create educational work, peace building work, and so forth. We know there's been a shift in public opinion. What you're expressing in terms of the challenges is the sense that we have had in the last few years that things have declined for us, and they have. But like I'm saying, we've come a long way, and there's a ways to go. But I do believe the work of, and as I said, there's podcasters doing this work now. There's writers, television personalities, and back to you, Daisy, because I mean, this podcast is an example of that, but you've been doing a lot for a long time. And I feel like you're one of the unsung heroes of the American Muslim community. And the all these efforts together have created that swing that I just referenced.
Thank
And
you so
keep
much.
that in your show. Don't edit that out just because it's a compliment to you.
Thank you so much. So I know that each of your documentaries has been wildly successful in some way or other in shifting the narrative around a particular topic. What specific conversation or shift in perception do you hope to catalyze with this one, especially with the non-Muslims?
What I hope people come away with is uh, that people with broken hearts and people who are searching for the meaning of love will find some answers in these stories
Mm.
and and therefore connect to some degree to the Muslim tradition by having these stories speak to them in a universal way, because these are universal stories and we tell it in a universal way. We don't really narrow the focus to Muslims this, Muslims that in the show. We take these shows, we take these stories broadly, and how they and because Ariella herself is not on a specific Muslim quest, she's on a quest to get over a broken heart of losing her father. So it's a
Mm.
universality in our approach, and that's what I hope people take. I hope, I remember once many years ago, someone made the statement in some lecture or someplace that the Prophet Muhammad is not just for Muslims. Prophet Muhammad's for the world,
Yeah.
meaning, which I took from that, meaning that um, uh, the insights, the ideas, the models that he presents or the Islamic tradition presents isn't just being held carefully. Islam, it does not keep people out. It's
Yeah.
not like you must think and believe these things or you can't come in. It has a lot of spaces for people to enter and be and take something from it, and that's been the history of Islam too throughout the years. So that's what I hope happens in this film as well.
Yeah, it's a human experience. It's a
Yes,
human, right? So, this is going to premiere very shortly next week on PBS. I'm sure that you have plans to reach a wider audience. You've always had school outreach. Is there anything else community screenings? You just had a very big one. Is there anything else you want to share with the audience that you plan to do?
the audience should know that you are also a featured speaker in the Islam's Greatest Stories of Love.
Oh, thank you
Uh,
for including me. I want to tell you, it was an absolute pleasure to be part of it, and I can't wait to see the final product.
Yes. I know you weren't able to come to the premiere that we had. We had about 1,400 people attend a few weeks
Wow.
ago. And several of the films I've done in the past have gotten standing ovations, but this one got two standing ovations. So this will be on broadcast nationally on public television, PBS, on
Mhm.
Friday, August 22nd. Most places it'll be 9 p.m., but check your local listings because sometimes there's a shift of an hour, a half hour or so. Then it'll be available online on YouTube, on the PBS YouTube channel for I think 2 weeks. So if you miss Friday night's broadcast, you can find it and you can go to the YouTube channel and watch it. We are actually in the midst of developing the outreach project that will surround this. It's going to be called Bridges of Virtue,
Mhm.
and it will be taking the film and ideas and themes in the film across America. Uh, you mentioned the screening we did. We host screenings all the time. If someone wants a community wants to do a community do a screening, just go to our website or give us a call or contact us in some way, and we will happily and eagerly work it out for you.
Yeah. Well, I also hope that it creates a larger movement to tell these more nuanced Muslim stories on the screen because
Yes.
this there are so many stories to be told, Alex. We know that, right? And I want to thank you for producing this film. It's long overdue, and this film that shows us that love isn't just a human experience, it truly is a universal language.
Yes.
So, Alex, thank you so much. Would you like to say some few last parting words before I speak to my listeners?
Keep
Thank
on
you.
doing the good work you do.
Thank you so much. So, dear listeners, Sometimes all it takes to challenge centuries of misunderstanding is a story told well. Islam's greatest stories of love is premiering shortly. I hope you'll watch it and see for yourself how love, in all its profound and challenging forms, writes the soul of a civilization. It not only transforms hearts, but shapes history, art, and spirituality. So until next time, I'm Daisy Khan. Stay blessed.
All of us experience loss. We are told with hardship, there is new life. It's not the end of the story, it's the beginning of another story.
The loss of my father, the greatest love of my life, sent me reeling. I'm trying to find solace in my faith, but how can I make peace with such heartbreak? My Muslim friends gave me an idea. They sent me on a quest, searching Islam's stories of love for answers to questions we all ask, which unraveled the secrets of the Taj Mahal, illuminated a little-known story about Malcolm X, and demonstrated how love can change the world.
Love is not just an emotion, it's a force.
I've met religious leaders, historians, and artists who shared their knowledge and offered insights into these stories, who might help me reconcile the joy of love for my father and the terrible pain of his loss. What can we learn from Islam's greatest stories of love?
Every heart breaks, and your heart must break. But what a difference there is between a heart that merely breaks and a heart that breaks open.
What does that mean for a heart to break open?
Thank you for joining me on Wise Women. If something stirred in you today, don't let it stop here. Share this episode with someone who needs it. Reflect on what resonated for you, and definitely plant one seed of change, however small. Remember, you do matter, and your actions have a ripple effect. But none of us can rise alone. To explore more resources and ways to get involved, do visit my website, daisycon.com. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, because every click is your way of amplifying this message to others. Wisdom isn't just heard, my friends, it's lived. So let's live it. Until next time, stay wise and stay rooted.